big questions we have after watching Star Wars The Last Jedi. Just to warn you, there are full spoilers for Star Wars The Last Jedi. So if you haven't seen the movie or don't want it spoilt for you, go away and watch it, then come back and see this video. I'm Andy Hartup, and I'm joined by Lauren O'Callaghan.
Hello.
Now, the first big question we have is, who the hell was Snoke?
Yeah, we never really found out, did we?
No.
He dies.
Yes. Well, I mean, we got to go weapons free on the
I know.
spoilers.
Just like, can I say that? Yes, we definitely put a spoiler warning in. Okay. Yeah, he's dead. Second movie, middle chapter, and Snoke the Big Bad is gone, and we didn't really know that much about him.
No. I found his death a little bit... I mean, I absolutely love the movie, but I found his death a little bit strange.
Yeah.
He was going, yep, I can see your every move. You're about to strike your opponent. Oh, the lightsaber next to me has cut me in half. Like, you're not as clever as you thought you were. Like, he thought he knew everything. He thought he'd manipulated the entire situation, but he couldn't tell that Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, was about to cut him in half with Rey's lightsaber. But, however, I mean, all his actual physical powers were pretty immense. Like, he was deliberately made to be stronger than, say, the Emperor or something like that, I felt. Do you think that's a fair comment?
Yeah, I liked the way that he died. It was surprising, it was clever, like you say. But the problem I think we're going to find is that there was a lot of build-up to Snoke and who he was, and very mysterious character in The Force Awakens, which never really got a payoff in The Last Jedi before he died.
Yeah.
And obviously it's going to be quite hard to have that payoff in the final movie because, well, he won't be in it. Mm-hmm. So it kind of feels like it's not a satisfying end to him because, like you say, there's a lot of unanswered questions still about this character who had a lot of power, who rose to a position of immense power within the galaxy. And yeah, we know more about him than we did really when The Force Awakens was released.
Yeah. Now, I have a theory about it, based on one that was very prevalent around The Force Awakens, in that he is a Sith known as Darth Plagueis. And he's referenced in the third film by Darth Sidious, the Emperor Palpatine, and he was his master. And he was referenced as a Jedi so powerful that he could cheat death and create life. Now, how the story goes is that Darth Sidious, the Emperor, said that he learnt all he could from him and then killed him. So he became the senior Sith in the galaxy, so to speak. But if, like, I think looking at little bits of evidence, like the Emperor is an unreliable narrator. Like, he might have failed to kill him and might just be, just lying about it. Equally, we know this Darth Plagueis had the ability to cheat death. Now, it's very difficult to sort of cheat death from another Sith Lord. But it could be very possible that the Emperor thought he'd killed him and he brought himself back to life using the Force. Or, I think one of the other compelling bits of evidence for it being him is that the Emperor likes to use a lot of Force lightning, right? That was his attack of choice. And he... Snoke, in the latest films, he's got a face that seems almost melted and a big crack down his skull. Like, he's obviously been through some sort of really traumatic incident. Now, hear me out. What if Darth Sidious, the Emperor, tried to kill Darth Plagueis? He fried him with all this lightning, thought he was dead, saw he was all mangled and melted, and then just, went off. And then Darth Plagueis didn't die, spent the rest of the time recovering up until the end of The Last Jedi, and then started to bring things together for the First Order. That would explain his appearance, and it would explain why such an enormously powerful Force user has suddenly appeared from nowhere. I mean, there's really no backstory for him. It's just a theory, but I think it's one of the more compelling ones that I've seen. The next question we have to discuss is, what next for Leia? Because, I don't know about you, but when I was watching it, I thought, well, unfortunately, Carrie Fisher's passed away. It doesn't look good for the rebellion. Leia's going to sacrifice herself in a noble way. And I think the filmmakers, especially when in all the pre-release hype, they led us to believe that she was going to die. Like, there didn't seem to be any other possibility. And yet at the end of the film, she's still alive. But, how's she going to be in Episode 9?
She's not going to be in Episode 9. because they've already confirmed that she won't appear in either CGI form or, and obviously she hadn't shot anything before she sadly passed away. So if we assume that Disney's being honest about it, Leia won't be in episode 9, which means they're going to have to explain her absence off screen, which is a little bit disappointing personally, because she's such a major character in the Star Wars universe. It feels weird if her character does die, that we don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like we do need to see it, which is why I felt like they might have changed things slightly after she passed away to put that into The Last Jedi. But obviously, as we said, they didn't do that. So it's going to go one of two ways, and either it's going to be like, oh, Leia's gone on holiday over here, and she's very, very busy writing her new book and can't join us, or she sadly died in between the movies, neither of which I think anyone's going to be particularly happy about.
No.
I suppose a third option is Disney's fibbing, and she is going to be in it in some kind of CGI form, although she can't be in it a lot because obviously they'll only have the footage that's already been shot to work with. Mm-hmm, so, again, that's not exactly going to be the best outcome.
No, I think they bet big on her surviving this film and subverting audience expectations. And there was a lovely tribute to her at the end. And, she was all about hope. She exemplified the entire film. It's going to make things very, very difficult for J.J. Abrams making episode 9. I think he's been dealt quite a rough hand because there's all sorts of things happen in episode 8, and I assume he's just going to be told, well, you've got to deal with this, you've got to somehow explain it away. And you're right, I don't think they're going to be able to get rid of Leia from the Star Wars universe in a satisfactory way in episode 9, and I think they missed 2 opportunities to do it in episode 8. One where she's blown out of the bridge of the cruiser, and the other where she could have taken Holdo's place and steered the cruiser into the big dreadnought, but she didn't, and she's still alive at the end. So it's a bit of a knotty one to resolve. So the next big question is Rey a Jedi? Is she a Jedi now? Because she was on Act 2 for about 5 minutes. If anyone thought that the sequence in Empire Strikes Back where Luke and Yoda are training feels overly long and a little bit of a slow pace part of the movie, that feels like an eternity compared to how long Luke and Rey were training. I mean, she just turned up, lifted a few rocks, went to the place where he literally told her not to go. He had one instruction, says, don't go down into the dark side cave. She goes down into the dark side cave and then says, right, I'm off. I've got to go and try and turn Kylo Ren. And that's it. But Yoda seems to back her. He's like, well, you've got to learn from her. So is she a Jedi now?
I wouldn't really call it Jedi training, especially seeing as he spent most of the movie insisting that he wasn't going to train her as a Jedi. So when Luke tells Kylo Ren at the end that he won't be the last Jedi, I feel like that's a bit of a leap. And okay, we see Rey, lift loads and loads of boulders to help her friends escape, but I mean, Luke said in the movie that being a Jedi doesn't just mean being able to float stuff, so I don't know why that's supposed to be an indication that she's now a Jedi. I find it quite far-fetched, to be honest. Like, if they'd have gone with sort of what Yoda said, which was, she's not really a Jedi, but she's something new. Okay, yeah, I get that. That makes a bit more sense. But they kind of pinned everything on this title and had to follow it through, and yeah, I'm not buying it.
No, I think it may fall down to what they talk about as either the definition of a Jedi or what we traditionally think of as a Jedi in the Star Wars movies. And there's quite a bit of talking about how the light Jedis were really haughty and the dark Jedis were Sith. They were pure evil. They weren't all Sith, but they were very evil. So this new trilogy of films leading us towards a sort of more the grey Jedi, the Jedi with balance, with Force balance. And I think that maybe changes the definition of what we think as a Jedi. It's not this highly trained being I think Rey probably exists as a Force user who attempts to bring balance to the Force, and maybe that's the new definition of Jedi, which is a sort of secondary or hidden meaning to the title The Last Jedi. Next question is Captain Phasma really dead? Now, okay, so she falls into an explosion on a dreadnought that's literally ripping in half. So she seems fairly dead, like as deaths go, that's one of the deader ones. But there's a couple of things, like Disney have clearly taken a load of cues from the MCU, from the Marvel universe in this film. And that also leads me to believe that, you know, you mistrust character deaths because we know in the MCU, like most characters just don't die. You know, they always come back. And what puzzles me most about Phasma is she's involved so heavily in the pre-release marketing, and she's been built up to be this like one of the main characters in this trilogy. And she was in the film for about 5 minutes total. She shows up, captures Finn and Rose, and says, "Oh, I'll have a fight with you. I'll execute you." And then they start fighting, and then she's dead. I mean, that can't be it. She's been in the new movies for a total of about 10, 12 minutes. I find it very strange if she is gone. So that just leads me to believe that she might not be dead at all.
I think everyone was quite disappointed in The Force Awakens when she wasn't in it that much, but we were kind of promised that the character would come into its own in the second movie, and that didn't really happen. Kind of the same thing happened again. I kind of feel like Disney came up with this character that they thought was really cool and got a great actress to play her and made the armor all silver, and everyone was like, "Ooh, this is amazing." And then they thought, "Oh, that's enough, like we don't need to do anything else with the character." And it's just a bit disappointing, really. We could have probably forgiven it in The Force Awakens, but now that it's happened again in The Last Jedi, it's a bit ridiculous. And yeah, the movie's ended with her sort of, I would say she's dead, because yeah, she fell into like a fiery inferno, but I would have said that she was probably dead at the end of The Force Awakens as well, because as far as we knew, she was still on Starkiller Base when it exploded. So basically now Disney have to make sure that Star Wars 9 ends with Phasma dying but not actually dying, just to keep the joke running.
I think she's like Kenny from the South Park.
Yeah,
from South Park. Yeah, it's very strange. Possibly her armor is blast proof. We know it's blaster proof, but I don't know. It's a big stretch. That was a very big explosion. She did fall very hard into it. Very strange. The last question that we have, the last major question, is what is Kylo Ren's endgame? I mean, what is it?
I've no idea. I wish he'd tell us, because I'm a bit confused about why he's killed his master. I guess if he's like power mad and thirsty to be at the top of the First Order, it makes sense that he would betray Snoke, but it kind of feels like the aims were aligned. So if anything, he just took a massive risk, because we know General Hux isn't his biggest fan, so he really risked the First Order army when he killed Snoke. And it just doesn't really make a ton of sense unless his aims were so misaligned with what Snoke wanted that he had no choice. But we don't know that, because it's not 100% clear what Kylo Ren is after. He does sort of say to Rey, when he tries to bring her over to his side, you know, that we can rule side by side and bring order to the galaxy, which is something we've heard before in numerous Star Wars movies about, you know, how they just want to keep things in line. They just want to keep them organised. It's really just about organising. It's not about being a dictator. But it's such a it's such a non-committal statement that I don't think that's really enough for us to know what he's after.
I think he genuinely thought Rey would come over and join him.
Yeah.
And I think this is maybe being a bit too generous. I think he just pitched it wrong to her. Because I think on the Jedi spectrum, I think they're very closely aligned, the pair of them, and they want roughly the same thing. They want to bring balance to the galaxy and to the Force, but they're approaching it from very, very different angles. Rey wants to do it via a sort of democratic, everyone loves each other kind of way, and everyone's equal and celebrates each other, whereas Kylo Ren wants to bring balance via, you know, making people see his point of view and do things his way, and that's very ingrained in his character. He's very very self-centered, and he wants things his own way. And I think that's part of the reason why he killed Snoke in the first place, is because, not necessarily because he didn't feel he was philosophically aligned with Snoke, but because Snoke put him down and told him that he would never be Darth Vader. He wasn't a shadow of him, and killing his father, Han Solo, made no difference. He's got to do other things to prove himself. And I think Snoke was another father figure that he took on, who he couldn't ever be. He couldn't ever satisfy him in his eyes. So I think that's going to lead him to, that leads him to want to do things his own way. I don't necessarily think he or Rey are like dark or light side Jedis. I think they do want to bring order and balance, but like I said, from very, very different perspectives and using very different methods. So I think in as much as he has an end game, that's it. He does want to bring order. He just wants to do it via violence, and I don't even think he knows how he's going to do that because he's so angry.
Yeah, like it was almost like it was an emotional decision.
Mm-hmm.
Like he clearly didn't really want to kill Rey,
Mm-hmm.
because I think you're right. I think actually one of the things I really loved about this movie is their relationship, and it didn't feel fake. Like it did feel like they had a connection. Possibly kind of it's grown out of the fact that neither one of them is happy with how things are. It did feel like they had a connection, and it didn't feel fake. It felt pretty genuine. So he obviously didn't want to hurt her. And yeah, we've seen throughout the entire movie this Snoke kind of putting him down, and he's obviously not that happy with Snoke either. So I think actually the idea that it wasn't necessarily a calculated move in terms of his end game, but more an emotional reaction to the situation at the time, probably makes more sense to me. Mm-hmm. Like I can understand that better. And then once it was done, he sort of had to be like, oh, well, I'll just take over then and I'll bring order to the galaxy,
Mm-hmm.
and Rey will do it with me. Except she didn't.
Yeah, there's very much an emphasis, like he's really keen on getting rid of the old, isn't he? Like sweeping out all the old ways, like getting rid of the Resistance. Like he sees the First Order, the Jedi, he sees everything as like an old thing. He wants a fresh start. And it's ironic that he doesn't see that he wants a fresh start so he can repeat the mistakes of the past. And I think that's actually, it's one of the film's strongest moral messages. There's a lot of, shades of modern politics where everyone says, we're having a fresh start, where, you voted for this guy, you voted for this thing. And it's just history repeating itself. And I think that was very, very cleverly reflected in the movie. Lastly, let's talk about Rey's parents. Kylo Ren obviously reveals to her something that he says that she already knew, which is her parents were nobody. Right? Nobodies. One of them's a gambler who's dead in a ditch on Jakku, and his mother didn't. Her mother didn't really care about her. So Rey's parents. I mean, it's quite shocking. There was so much debate before The Last Jedi about who her parents were. Was she related to the Skywalkers? Was she Obi-Wan Kenobi's granddaughter or something like that? I thought it was a lovely twist to find out that she was nobody, and I think it's going to be one of the things that people talk about long after the movie, because I don't know whether they're going to be able to accept it. But I genuinely think it was a great twist, and I actually believe it. I think that's spot on, but there is going to be some doubt.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as with the deaths, really. Audiences have stopped trusting what they even see in the cinema nowadays, because so many movies have come back and been like, oh, no, wait, they were magically rescued or resurrected, or that was a lie, or there's always some reason, obviously, to try and hold people's interest and to have another twist and things like this. So I think a lot of people will be asking after they see The Last Jedi, are her parents really nobody? I think a lot of people won't believe it, because it was such a big thing after The Force Awakens, who she was related to, that there'll just be an inability to believe that they were nobody. And I personally, I really like it, and I hope they do stick with it, because it's different. And I don't think we need another connection to the Star Wars universe we already know. I mean, the three main characters from the original trilogy are literally in this trilogy, so we don't necessarily need another connection. I wouldn't have hated it if there was one, but I really love that there isn't, because that definitely feels like a fresh new story. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I guess we'll have to wait until episode 9 to find out for sure, because in the same way that J.J. Abrams said he was done, once he was done with The Force Awakens, it became Rian Johnson's story. And the way they tell it, there's no overarching story to this trilogy that they all have to follow. There's an end point for each director and a pickup point for each new director. So when J.J. Abrams, created the question around Rey's parents in The Force Awakens, there was probably a good chance that he did imagine they would be somebody, and it was Rian Johnson who chose for them to be nobody after all the hype around it. So when J.J. Abrams comes back to do Star Wars 9, I guess there's always the possibility that he'll want to go back to that original plan, and he'll work it into the story somewhere that, oh no, wait, those weren't your real parents. It was this guy who is connected to the Star Wars in some way. Mm-hmm. I hope he doesn't, but...
Yeah, you never know. I think whether it be Rian Johnson or Disney, they backed it quite hard at the end with the idea with the boy, the Force-sensitive boy on Canto Bight, with his broom. He's sweeping up, and he force pulls the broom to himself, and he's like the lowest of the low. He's a stable boy, but he's a Force user, so it's sort of reflective of that's where Rey was. That's where Rey started. So I think the movie backs itself up in its claims. So to conclude then, Episode 9, Snoke's going to resurrect himself with the help of Captain Phasma, who isn't dead. And we're going to find out that they, via the CG version of Leia, that Snoke and Phasma are in fact Rey's parents. Yeah? You heard it here first. That's it from us, but I'm sure you've got loads of your own theories on these things that we've discussed now, and on other stuff that we didn't manage to get to. If you do, leave them in the comments below, and watch out for loads more Star Wars Last Jedi stuff on Games Radar.